Not for you, but through you. Somebody say, I'm the priest. The neighborhood doesn't need to just see what God will do for you. They need to see what God will do through you. The problem with most Christians is we try to do a work for the Lord rather than allowing the Lord to do a work through us. Because every time we put our hands on it, we'll mess that thing up. We'll put something in the way that doesn't need to quite be there. I'm trying to tell somebody that God is transforming who you are, who you've been, because he's got a plan. Somebody say a plan. Oftentimes we think that God doesn't know what he's doing because we can't figure it out. Oftentimes, because we don't know what time it is, we think God doesn't know what time it is. But I'm telling you, we've come to a time period that there's some saved folk in this place that's ready to go to the next dimension. And I need to say to you, and I need to look you right in your face. I need to look you right in your eyeballs and say, who gives a ham fat what you did? Who gives a flip where you been? Who cares what they think about you? You've got to walk in who you are now. You can't change it. You can't reverse it. And ain't nothing you can do but say, baby, I'm sorry, but I'm stepping on into what God has for me. Because there's some people that'll keep you handcuffed to your mistake and you'll never walk in your manifestation. But I got to get over it so I can get over it. I've got to leave it alone so I can get along. There's some stuff that God is trying to say to you today, that even though they called you filthy last week, you a priest this morning, and God is able to do exceeding abundantly above not all that you ask or think, but he's able to do above all that you ask or think, and not just above all, but exceeding above all. It's some stuff you ain't even prayed for that God's getting ready to bless you with. And I don't want you to get confused. This ain't no message of hype. This is a message of truth. And if you're religious in this place today and you mad because God getting ready to bless somebody that you know ain't quite been right, then shame on you, because he been blessing your nasty, filthy tail all along the way. And you ought to thank God that he's still blessing nasty people. You ought to thank God that he's still blessing filthy people, because it keeps you eligible for a blessing. It keeps you eligible for a miracle. It keeps you eligible for a breakthrough, because once he stopped, you've been cut off. God is using people that's been through something and yet survived. People who recognize that they've made some mistakes and they're ready to give God another shot at this thing. Some people who had become frustrated where they are. And I want you to know, my daddy tells me all the time that frustration. I remember my natural father used to tell us when we were picking up a baseball that when we booted the ball, we would get mad. My dad would say, don't get mad about it, get mad at it. And so he would tell us that every now and then booting the ball was an indication that you wasn't getting down enough. Booting the ball was an indication that you didn't have your eye on it. Booting the ball was an indication that your stance wasn't quite right. Booting the ball was an indication that you was moving too fast. So I'm trying to tell some of y'all this morning, you might have booted some balls. It don't mean you're out. It's just an indication. And if you would allow God to change some stuff, your frustration now is going to help you realize that there's more in God and more that he wants to do for you. So spiritual frustration is good, because it reminds you that there's more of God that you need in your life. So you've got to learn how to celebrate yourself every now and then. I'm not talking about being arrogant and boastful. I'm talking about when you by yourself, you've got to begin to look at yourself and say, good God Almighty, you ain't as bad as I thought you was. You went to church again. You still paying your tithes. You a little crazy, but you all right with me. You've got to celebrate yourself, because every now and then it's some people that are sitting next to you and smile in your face, and all the time they want to take your place. Every now and then there's some people that don't understand your praise. They don't understand understand your worship, and though they smiling at you, they wishing that you would go down. They wishing that you would give up. They wishing that you would throw in the towel. So every now and then, when I go to my prophet's quarters, when everybody's gone and the door's closed, I just run around the room and I slap myself and I give high five to the wall and I say, we should have been dead, but look what the Lord has done. I get to preach again. I get to prophesy again. I get to pray again. I know I don't deserve it, but the devil thought he had me, but I'm back. Tell somebody I'm back. Some kind of way. You got to learn how to boost yourself up. I know Craig is coming, but I can't wait on him. He might get a flat tire. He might get caught up baking cookies. I got to get a praise for myself. I got to get a shout for myself. I got to learn how to encourage my... Sometimes the Bible told us that the redeemed of the Lord say so. You got to begin to prepare for your own breakthroughs. You got to see yourself walking in a new light. You got to see yourself on the other side. Because the enemy wants to keep you looking backwards. He wants to remind you of what you call disappointments and letdowns and what the world has pinned as your failures. But God is saying it might not have worked out the way you wanted to then. But when you put your hand in my hand, I'm going to use that for good. Remember, because I have not seen, so what people think they know about you. Tap somebody and say, you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. If I thought, when I talk about prophet's music, he ought to every now and then say to himself, if you thought that was prophetic, if you thought that was going to bless you, wait till the next one gets birthed out of me. Not because of who I am, but because of who. And remember, I'm not doing a work for the Lord, but the Lord is doing a work through me. And see, when I can see it like that, then my humility mindset changes. I don't have to think of myself as lowly. I just got to agree with who God says I am. And I don't give a ham fat if you like it or not. If God calls me a prophet, I'm a prophet. If God calls me an evangelist, I might have gossiped all last year, but I'm about to bring the gospel this week. If God said something about me, you can't bother what God said, because if God said it, he'll make it good. And even if he's got to work with me a little while, God's still going to bring it to pass. Somebody say, work with me. All we've got to do is trust in the name of the Lord, and God will do what he said. So there's a blessing that's being released in the house of God. Revelation chapter 1, verse 6 says, and hath made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. If I was preaching on the triune Godhead, I'd have something right there. I'd be able to talk about Jesus for a minute right there. I'd be able to talk about the Lamb slain. I'd be able to talk about his sovereignty and providential wisdom and his ability to do two things at one time. Him being theanthropic, all God and all man at the same time, all the time while he was here, being able to take on the sins of man while being able to forgive it at the same time, being able to die but blow himself back life, being able to be buried but yet on a journey to hell to get back some keys. His ability not only to see me on the other side of the wall, but to walk through it. I need somebody to know that you've got some walls in your life, and if you would just call on on Jesus, he's not going to knock on some of y'all's doors. He's going to walk through some of y'all's walls. God is getting ready to bless somebody. I just felt that and felt like I needed to say it. You've been waiting on God to knock on your door. Don't even worry about the door, baby. He's coming through the wall to bless you. He's going to reveal his glory to you coming through the wall. He's getting ready to bust a